Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have X-Men Apocalypse. This is the 20th Century Fox, of course, acquired film. This is from 2016. It's 2 hours and 25 minutes long, and this is the third in the series of modern X-Men films. Of course, the original ones, also directed by Bryan Singer, except for the third one, which was done by Brett Ratner. These, First Class, that was Matthew Vaughn. But then Bryan came back and did Days of Future Past, and he did this one. I don't remember if he did Dark Phoenix or not. Either way, Bryan Singer, who will probably never make another superhero movie again, we know of. These are still his babies. This is still he's the one who brought the X-Men to us in the year 2000, back at a time when superhero movies were not a guarantee win at the box office. In fact, so many failed, not counting Blade, although its sequels did not nearly as well, I don't believe, later on, despite having Guillermo del Toro as the director of the second one. It's still... I mean, and of course, people who dominated the box office when it came to superhero movies and then sort of, I think, soured the audience on that was DC, and they did, plenty of Superman films. They did all the Batman films, and right around then, in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, was all the Schumacher Batmans, which sort of turned the Burton stuff, which is more gothic, of course, and turned it into something more Batman 66, Adam West. So, and then it got very colorful and weird. But you know what? Marvel came in with 20th Century Fox having the rights, because Marvel in the late 90s was pretty much on the verge of bankruptcy, and that's why the X-Men got sold off to 20th Century Fox to make their films, and Spider-Man went off to Sony, and the Hulk went off to Universal, and so many different directions. And that's why slowly Disney has been, once they acquired Marvel in 2000, sorry, before that. Lucasfilm was 2012. Once they got a hold of the core Marvel characters that nobody else seemed to want, that they couldn't sell off, and still made a mint on them, like with Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and eventually the Avengers, well, they bought 20th Century Fox, bringing the X-Men, Daredevil, Punisher, Ghost Rider, all those things back into the fold. We haven't seen all of them return yet. Certainly not the X-Men yet, technically. But we've seen hints, and they are promised to come in the years ahead. This, in 2016, still very much a 20th Century Fox vehicle, continuing the early stories, sort of telling a story in each decade over the years. They started in the 60s, when the X-Men actually premiered in comic books, with, X-Men First Class. Then came X-Men Days of Future Past, which moved into the 70s and sort of crossed over the old school X-Men from the previous films with the new school X-Men, and had a whole time travel thing back and forth between those eras, and you got to see everybody. It was a smorgasbord of characters. How could you add any more? Well, guess what? They did. Of course, some were just younger versions of characters we already knew, like Storm. They weren't going to have Halle Berry perform herself as probably a young 20-something Storm, running on the streets of Cairo as a thief, and having Storm-wielding mutant powers. Well, yeah, they weren't going to do that necessarily. But they got a wonderful actress. What was her name? She was fantastically lovely. Where is she? Alexandra Shipp. Yeah. So we get to see her. She's one of many. We get to see Olivia Munn as Psylocke. We see Jubilee in this. We see Kurt Wagner. What's his name? I gotta keep referencing some of these people. Sorry, Cody Smit-McPhee. So we get a lot of new characters. We get Angel. Of course, we have Apocalypse, played by Moon Knight himself, Oscar Isaac. So yeah, we have an early appearance of Oscar Isaac in the MCU. Doubtful he will ever play Apocalypse again, and Sabanur. No. Weirdly enough, though, both of his characters are Middle Eastern flavored, in a sense, Egypt and the whole mythology with the Khonshu and everything else with Moon Knight, and also with Ensabanur, with Egypt and Cairo and everything else. So yeah, he's got some old school connections to those characters. Even, and I'm pretty sure older Moon Knight characters in the comics knew Ensabanur. Probably look that up. It's a deeper universe in the comics than there is in the films, where they're only limited to about 2.5 hours to mess with us. So in this, of course, we have everybody sort of stabilizing themselves after the events of Days of Future Past. Charles has come back from his deep depression, and he started the school again, inviting new students in. Magneto, Eric, is off in Poland, hiding off away with a normal man's job, working away in a factory, and he has a wife, he has a daughter, and he's living at peace. Meanwhile, Mystique, played by Jennifer Lawrence, is running around playing mutant rescuer. She's going around to different places and pulling mutants from captivity or from dire situations, where she finds Kurt Nightcrawler, and pulls him out of a battle to the death in a cage match against Angel, who also she technically rescues. I'm not going to give away too much of this. Odds are, if you wanted to ever see the X-Men, odds are you've already seen the X-Men. All the movies. And whether you like them or not, yeah, it's... yeah. Okay. The reason why I'm being so is the fact that even though I love the X-Men, I have since about the time that this movie takes place in 1983, I have loved the X-Men, and this is probably my least favorite of the films. Even though it takes place in the 80s, I love the 80s, obviously. Check this out. All this 80s stuff. So, despite all that, this, to me, all of its parts didn't grab me. Apocalypse definitely was a force of nature. He was a threat. I think watching it this time, and I've seen this a few times over the years. The last time I saw it was with friends, and we kind of did a marathon each week of different X-Men movies, like maybe one or two a week, and this kind of confirmed for me that I really didn't enjoy it for a number of reasons. But this movie works great in pieces, in vignettes, there's a scene with Storm in it. Oh, there's a scene with Psylocke in it. Oh, of course, there's a Quicksilver scene. Quicksilver, who technically in the comics isn't exactly the coolest character. At one point he was Magneto's son. Due to the film rights and everything else, they actually decided to make Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver not the children of Magneto. But now that they purchased the rights to them, they could make them children of Magneto again. It's very confusing. So yes, in this film, Quicksilver is the son of Magneto, or at least he believes himself to be. And there is no Scarlet Witch, of course, because we saw both Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in Age of Apocalypse, Avengers Age of Apocalypse, but we know what happened there also with Quicksilver. So yeah, it's we could see the multiverse in a sense, in effect, the multiverse existing in those things, and we even touched upon it in WandaVision when he showed up. What's his name again? I can't believe my brain is not letting me remember who he is. Come on, come back here. You're like the coolest guy in here. Right here, Evan Peters. Yeah, I first saw him in American Horror Story and things like that. Of course, we have Nicholas Hoult as the Beast, and we have James McAvoy as Professor Xavier, and Michael Fassbender as Magneto. And so we have the whole cast back and a bunch of brand new ones, and it's a lot. It's a lot going on, but yet nothing is really going on. There's a lot of big stakes moments, but it still feels like action figures being banged together. We get to see characters battle each other, and characters we see as heroes are technically villains in this because they fall in with Apocalypse. He's very convincing because you kind of go against him, he's pretty much going to turn you to dust. He's pretty much all powerful, but he only wants to become more powerful in the fact that once he realizes Charles Xavier exists and has the ability to control the minds of everybody on Earth, well, why wouldn't you want to make that upgrade? If you were an X-Men fan and an Apocalypse fan, and you're very nitpicky about them trying to marry this to the timeline exactly of the comics, you know it's already too late for that. There's no reason for any of this to expect that. And also, if you expect the origin of Apocalypse, as convoluted as that has been and told very much out of order over the years, don't expect it to match up. It's really his powers, everything else. Just don't expect it. And I think his powers would have looked kind of silly. His original powers would have looked kind of silly in this film. So yeah, don't expect everything one to one. There, it is very much a world changing, high stakes kind of thing when Apocalypse is involved. And yes, the end of the world is at hand in the sense that when Apocalypse steps on the stage in any manner, it's the end of the world, and only the X-Men can stop him. So yeah, I appreciate that. The effects for the most part were pretty good, pretty solid. Nice little nods to the 80s and things like that. They do that in every era. The next film, Dark Phoenix, which is the last in the series, that actually could have taken the place as my least favorite one. Takes place in the 90s. So apparently nobody really ages that much over 4 decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Nobody really ages for the most part, except for Charles and Eric. Well, in this span, they don't age, but eventually, 90s all the way up to 2000, the year 2000, then suddenly they're not super old, but they're older. It's Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of, don't expect timelines to work properly in this. They're just telling a story, and that's okay. It's and also technically as even though this is not the main prime 616, even though the MCU isn't technically 616, no matter what Christine says in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, these X-Men stories are not invalid. They're just a different reality. And whatever X-Men we get in the MCU proper eventually will be something very different. Something very different, but will be considered canon. It will be considered the primary thing. So yeah, by the way, Phase 5, Phase 6, don't know when that's all going to happen, but these can still be fun for you if you enjoyed them at all. But yeah, it's not don't expect anything to have consequences here. Of course, we're going to get Wolverine out of this, and of course, Hugh Jackman does make an appearance in this film, and it's kind of an important moment in his life. We get to see Weapon X. We get to see how he escapes from Stryker's Weapon X facility, and it's kind of a big deal how it all works together, how it all works out. Why does he have such a connection to Jean? Well, we kind of figure that out. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, this is basically Simon Kinberg, the screenplay writer, and Bryan Singer's toy box to play with. And yeah, I mean, it works very well if you're looking to say, I remember that from the comics, or I remember that character, I like that, or there's a nod to that. That's fun. They even pick on themselves a little bit when the kids go out for just a day just to get out of the school to go see Return of the Jedi. Since it's the summer of 1983, that's when it came out. Yeah, they they leave and they're like, we still think Empire Strikes Back was better. And Gene makes a comment, well, you always know that the third one is not always the worst one, making a nod not only to their own movie, but of course to the original third X-Men movie, and Return of the Jedi, of course. But yeah, so it's a neat. That's the biggest little burst of humor that came out of this, and they weren't wrong. Gene wasn't completely wrong. But yeah, you can't skip this in the whole realm of all the the 20th Century Fox X-Men films. It's a requirement. If you're gonna, even though you may or may not if you don't like this one, you still have to see it in order to understand what's going to happen in Dark Phoenix, because it sets the stage. While they may, of course, I'm not going to spoil anything by saying this, while they do defeat Apocalypse, they open the door to something much, much more dangerous right in their own home. So, yeah, as indicated by the title. And it gets a chance to sort of rewrite that ending that we had in Ratner's X-Men: The Last Stand. So, yeah. And all these films become sort of like a weird continuity cluster F, kind of like the comics. It kind of storylines that go on forever or just contradict each other, then they have to write themselves out of those things. And yeah, the X-Men comics have been, and historically been, a bit of a mess. Yeah, even through the 80s, especially through the 80s and 90s, despite Chris Claremont's involvement. He's responsible for so much good in the X-Men, but a little bit for some of the unresolved stuff, let's just say. When it comes to these films, of course, the stuff that Ratner decided to do, and then the stuff that they made in the films afterwards, and time-wise, yeah, you just gotta ignore it. You just have to ignore it and just go, I'm having fun with an X-Men movie. That's the only thing I can say. You just don't expect it to all work. If you're like a nitpicky person when it comes to continuity and why is Professor Xavier alive, or things like that at different points in the series, not here, but not this film, but we get to learn the origin of how he got bald, so that's neat. And we get to see the origins again. These are technically the youngest appearances of Jean and Scott in the series, and of course not all the X-Men survive in this story. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to spoil something here. You know, we had Angel in X-Men Last Stand. He dies in this one. So how is... Yeah, see, it doesn't make sense. And don't expect it to. But yeah, like I said, this is not my favorite of the X-Men films by far. But it wasn't... Watching it this time wasn't as bad. It had a few goosebump moments because, again, I love the X-Men so much. There are little things that were made just for me, for fans like me, that we can appreciate and have fun with. But for the most part, it's just a lot of really cool scenes slapped together and then stitched. And to say, this is a movie, 2.5 hours long, good for you. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And, I mean, again, one of the biggest showcase moments was Quicksilver's scene when he arrives at the mansion. It's kind of hard to beat the kitchen scene from the last one, from Days of Future Past. But this takes it to a new level, and it's much longer, and they have a lot of fun with it. And that's, if you're going to watch it for any reason, watch it for the Quicksilver scene again. And he is also one of the more appealing characters because he's just a butt, and he's funny. So, yeah. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
295.
295. 295. Well, making this easy on me. I don't know how old this one is, but we're gonna find out. Maybe it's a live action thing. I don't know. It's confusing to me. It's a short, but yeah, it can't be what I'm thinking it is. It's got to be a short. This is On Ice, featuring Mickey Mouse. It's not Mickey Mouse on ice. It's not like an ice skating thing, I'm pretty sure. So it's probably one of the really old ones. One of the silly symphonies, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Tomorrow, On Ice, starring Mickey Mouse on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.